Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Alex from Property Buyer Connect, and today I'm going to talk to you about Netflix's latest show that everybody is buzzing about, Worst Roommate Ever. It's a show about the worst roommates ever, and actually, my friend tipped me on to episodes 4 and 5 in particular. Um, about a guy named Jason Bachman, and he actually goes by Jed Creek is his fake name. But Jason Bachman was a serial squatter. He actually uh, basically pseudo scammed people into moving into their place quickly and then became the worst roommate ever by refusing to leave and pay rent, refusing to pay rent, and having studied law himself, he knew the laws in and out. And he was able to terrorize and stay in places for very long, sometimes essentially ruining people's lives. In one case, a woman he lived with, she had to foreclose on her apartment condo and now is not sure if she'll be able to purchase another one because she was working a lot and he was not paying, and she got into a difficult situation. And yeah, it's real sad. It's a real sad story, but fact of the matter is, um, when you have things like this, when you have loopholes, people will exploit them. It's like anything else. There's people who have stories about, okay, I can kind of see why this person would claim rights to this. I kind of am on their side about this. And there's other people who just take advantage of the situation, right? So obviously, Jamison Bachman, he took advantage of the situation to the highest degree, and it was really painful for everyone to deal with. And actually, some of it takes place in Philadelphia, and just I don't even know what to say about the Alex Miller who decided to throw a party to see if that would shake him, but I don't know. That's I guess maybe that's for another video. Anyway, so let's just talk a little bit about what a squatter is, right? So you have a squatter, you have a trespasser. Now, before I start talking all this legal stuff, I just want to point out I am not a lawyer, so if you are looking to actually eject someone from your property, definitely consult a lawyer. But having dealt with situations like this before, not quite like Jason Bachman, but squatter situations before, and dealing with a couple lawyers, I know the process fairly well in Philadelphia. Obviously, it changes over time, so I might not be on top of the latest, but I have a general good idea. So anyway, that's all to say, just do your research also. But okay, now let's get into squatter versus trespasser. So there's kind of a gray area, squatter versus trespasser, but trespasser generally is someone who's was recently on the property, only plans on staying there for a temporary amount of time and then leaving, maybe to cause damage or to steal something, or just, just to cause a ruckus, right? I mean, like when a lot of us were kids, we were just trespassing somewhere because it said don't go here, and of course we're like, well, the sign says don't go here, we're of course going to go over that line, right? So that's a trespasser. It's more temporary. Now a squatter plans on living there. They have, maybe they move some of their clothes or personal items there. Maybe they started to put utilities in their name. So squatters, their intention is to stay there long term, right? And so how long exactly they're there before you can like remove them or get the police involved is really a gray area. I'll give you a good example. We actually, one of our other companies actually was involved in a scam where a scammer managed to, it's a long story, but a scammer managed to basically have someone sign a fake lease and convince them to break into our property. And even with evidence of a broken lock, we called the police, and the police came, and the tenant had a fake lease. So the police, even though they were trespassing, the police looked at the lease and said, "Hey, you need to go into the court system for this." So it was a big, long, drawn out process. So I mean, it's really gray, especially even if you call the police in Philadelphia, they're not guaranteed to just say, "Hey, you're definitely trespassing. We'll get you out." They're very hands off. They're very want to push it to the court. So there's all sorts of different scenarios. Obviously, we deal more with people who we know are squatting, right? Versus someone who's like kind of intending to squat, like this Jamison Bachman guy. Like it's just like, okay, we're buying this property knowing that what the situation is, right? So at least we can prepare for it. But yeah, I mean, people, I mean, there's all sorts of situations. There's people I have had another situation where a landlord basically stopped doing repairs and stopped really taking care of the place. And the renter said, "Hey, well, I'm going to just stop paying." And then it became a mutual relationship of not repairing, not paying. And actually, it was a property that we bought, and we wound up paying the tenant to move somewhere. So that's what we call cash for keys. So that's one type of way for dealing with a squatter. Sometimes they just need some money to find another place. A lot of times, if they're out of work, or maybe they just don't have the upfront cash. A lot of people don't have the upfront cash to put 3 months deposit down on an apartment, right? So sometimes they just need a little incentive to do that. Other times we've had one where basically a family member made a contract with another family member that if he stayed there and did work on the property, that it would suffice as payment for rent. And then over time, the one owner wasn't really paying attention, and years go by, and now the person's in there and they say, "Hey, well, I painted it. I did these renovations, and I've been living here for 5 or 10 years. I mean, it's my property. I mean, I pay the utilities." So it gets really sticky to get people out. So again, there could be lots of malice involved. There could be not, it just could be sort of almost accidental. It could be negligence by the owner. So there's all sorts of different things. But I would say, especially as it relates to Jed Creek in this show, when you're picking a roommate, I mean, first of all, you have to do the background check. Or a tenant, really. Tenant or roommate, you have to do a background check. No questions asked. Even if it's like a good friend or whatever, you have to run the background check. Secondly, I found that anyone who's trying to move quickly is normally a red flag, right? Because you should have time to look for a place. If someone's looking to move in 3 days, it's like, well, what happened with what's going on with your current housing situation that you need to leave so fast, right? And in Jason Bachman's case, one of the places, he showed up with his U-Haul, and he just said, "Oh yeah, well, I have my U-Haul here. I'm ready to go right now. I have the money." I mean, that's a huge red flag. So obviously, like, some logic is involved here when you're picking out tenants or roommates. But in the case, okay, so let's get to in the case you do have a squatter, right? So you have this guy, or you have a situation where you already know what you need to do. Well, first you need to get a lawyer involved. So right off the bat, the lawyer is going to want a retainer, and there's hourly rates involved. So right off the bat, as soon as you get a lawyer involved, you're talking a few $1,000s, right? So that's the first sort of obstacle in getting a squatter out, is you need money for a lawyer. I suppose you could do it yourself if you're a DIY type of person, but I'm not even sure legally, honestly, if you can or not. Anyway, so you get a lawyer, and Sometimes you could send what's called a notice to vacate, which is basically just a letter from your lawyer saying, hey, you have 30 days to respond. You're not the owner of the property. The owner tends to take legal action. After that, you serve a complaint to them. They have, I think, 20 days from the date of serving the complaint to respond. If you don't get a response from that, then they send a 10-day notice of intention to enter judgment. Then if there's no response after that, they file a motion to enter judgment, and then 20 days more, they file a petition for writ of possession to see a judge. And then there's another 20-day response period by the court. And then after the court replies, which could take months, you can proceed to schedule a lockout date. So there's this whole list of stuff that you need to do that takes months to get this person out. Meanwhile, you're paying holding costs on the property, insurance, taxes. If you're paying in Philadelphia, the water stays in the owner's name, so you're probably paying water if you already bought this property and settled on it. So there's all sorts of charges. Yeah, and then once you schedule a lockout date, then the sheriff has to schedule, you actually have to physically schedule a date where the sheriff shows up to physically prepare to remove someone from the property. And then if they are there with their stuff, and you legally have to have a moving company show up and prepare to move their stuff to a storage unit for 30 days. So we recently did that, and they charge 4-hour minimum, four guys, 4 man hours, and there's only certain companies that the city recommends, right, to do this. So we had to call a specific company, and then we went there and they had to move all their stuff, and they charged us. It was probably it was over $1,000 just for that. So it's an expensive process. If you're trying to deal with it yourself and you work with someone like us, we try to explain, listen, if you're selling us a property with a squatter in it, that's fine, but just know that you're going to get a deeply discounted offer because of all this work involved, right? So, I mean, it's doable, it's possible, but it's a lengthy process. And again, bringing this back into Jason Bachman, he sort of knew the law, right? So he was one step ahead of everyone. So in one case, he filed a restraining order before the other person filed the restraining order, and then that was like a whole delay. So it's a big mess, and I mean, a lot of these squatters, some of them are pretty, if they've been doing this for a while, some of them are pretty brushed up on the law, so you can't just pull a fast one on them. They kind of know their stuff sometimes. So, yeah, I mean, it's a horrible situation to have to deal with a non-paying person. It's just I've had friends who've had to deal with it, whether you're doing eviction or ejectment. Maybe I'll do a video on the difference between the two. But it's just a horrible situation. I feel bad for these people. In some cases, it really looked like it really threw their life for a loop, and it's just a sad story. But really interesting documentary by Netflix. I recommend if you check it out if you haven't already. Maybe you're looking for some commentary, but yeah, that's my little riff on worst roommate ever, squatters, what's going on with Philadelphia squatter market. Squatter market, I don't know if you want to call it a market, but the squatter situation. I will say COVID obviously made everything way, way more lengthy than normal in terms of time frame. We're now sort of getting back to that normalcy time frame, like 3 to 6 months area. So, yeah, it's just no one wants to talk about squatters, but here we are talking about squatters. So, as with every video, I will drop our info below if you have questions about squatters, if you want to talk to me about this show, if you want to talk about eviction, if you have a property you're looking to get rid of. We've now expanded not only into Greater Philadelphia, but we're in Lehigh Valley, we're in Delaware. So anywhere in this area, let us know about your property and we'll be glad to help. So thanks for watching this video and take care, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.